So, legen wir los, würde ich sagen.
So much for joining me for a pre-Mirage interview. I'm joined with Octavian and Andrew. Some are already familiar with Octavian. We'll do introductions here in a sec, but this is Andrew's first time at an interview, I believe. I saw you did a ExileCon thing.
Für alle, die es nicht mitgekriegt haben, das ist das Interview von vor also am Sonntag war das, Sonntagabend mit Octavian und Andrew. Erstes Mal, dass die wirklich so auf der Bildfläche sind. Die werden wahrscheinlich zukünftig so die Community-Podcast-Geschichten übernehmen, damit Jonathan mehr Zeit für Presse- und Business-Sachen hat, I guess.
But I figured if you guys can start with introducing yourselves and talk a little bit about what you do at Granny Year Games.
My name's Andrew. I've been at GGG for about 7 years now. I started off in QA and then I think I moved to design around Metamorph League. Out of like all of the designers at GGG, I'm probably the one who's like spent the highest proportion of time on Path of Exile 1. Not to say I haven't done a few things on PoE 2, but yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with like all of the leagues back since when, all of them.
Von allen Entwicklern hat er am meisten gespielt. Alles klar.
Is it true that you are the dev check guy? That whenever Chris Wilson was doing like a dev check, it would be you answering the questions?
Yeah.
Oder er hat am meisten programmiert, vielleicht auch. Yeah. Was wahrscheinlich das Gleiche ist.
That's good to know. I know a lot of people are curious about that. It's a good emote on Twitch too. Octavian, do you want to introduce yourselves for people who aren't familiar with you already?
Andrew ist der Dev-Check-Guy von
Chris. Selling himself a little bit short. Like he is essentially
er war der Dev-Check-Guy immer? Oh, ich dachte immer, dass er zu Mark rübergeguckt hat. Weil Mark dann irgendwann als erstes dazugekommen ist. Interesting.
The bedrock of Path of Exile 1 design. Like, if there is a league mechanic or other thing in Path of Exile 1 that you like, he probably did some of the implementation for it.
Wow.
But yeah, my name is Octavian. Not my real name. Technically, my real name is Chris, but there's already another Chris at Grand, or there has been another Chris at Grinding Gear. But yeah, my name is Octavian. I joined the company about 4 years ago now, and I am, design on PoE 1, though I started in QA, like Andrew, and like a lot of our designers. And also have touched a number of things on PoE 2, but, full-time PoE 1 now.
Achso, ist es vielleicht gut für uns, wenn wir die Leute, die nicht so gut in Englisch sind, die haben es vielleicht leichter, wenn wir auf Deutsch stellen, oder? Auto übersetzen. Ist dann zwar manchmal Quatsch, aber ich glaube, die Englisch können, die verstehen das. Wir haben keinen Jonathan dabei, alle reden in einem normalen Tempo, dürfte eigentlich funktionieren.
And for those that don't know, Octavian used to be a streamer before as well, so...
Yes, in a past life. Right? What's that?
You're still a part-time streamer.
Now and again, as a hobby. But
really good games
used
too.
Used to be full-time. Used to be on podcasts on the other side of this.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for introducing yourselves, and thank you guys for being here and giving me this opportunity. I have a lot of things I'm excited to talk about, so we'll start with talking about Mirage itself. And I'm a little bit curious with when it comes to ideas and stuff. When you're thinking up a league for PoE 1, do you ever consider, is this going to be in PoE 2? Is it going to be used there? And how will it look like when it comes to PoE 2?
Dachte kurz, die meinte, sie übersetzt audisch. Nee, das war ich nicht.
Not really. I mean, I won't say that it's literally never come up as a question, but it's kind of an afterthought. Yeah, I mean, in the case of Mirage.
Okay, warum ist da so ein scheiß Rauschen bei dem? Hört ihr das? Die ganze Zeit immer, wenn die anfangen zu reden, ist Sitzen die im Serverraum oder was?
I pitched the idea originally, and that certainly wasn't part of the premise, no.
Mirage is very, very different. We've seen starting at Legion, we had like the homogenization
Noch
of loot.
Audioprobleme.
This seems a
okay,
little bit
check.
the opposite of that, where it's enhancing each league's individual flavor. Would you talk a little bit more about like the league mechanic itself, especially like just basic things like what happens when you die? Can you go back in?
You would use a portal in the same way that you would if you died in the original map.
Okay.
So yes, you can go back in if you have a portal remaining.
And then we saw in the video that you free the djinns. Does that itself drop any loot or end the Mirage?
It doesn't prevent you from going back in the Mirage if there was still loot in there that you hadn't looted yet and you wanted to go get. But the djinn breaking free is kind of a flavor thing. However, completing a Mirage within the Mirage, so finding the astral chain and breaking that, will spawn a cache of rewards.
Okay, cool. And like I said, it alters the league mechanics and boss fights. I was wondering if we could have any examples of that. I'm particularly curious about how it interacts with ritual. Can we have 8 rituals, basically?
I was going to say, for the majority of this league cycle, Octavian has been working on the league and I've been working on a bunch of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So Mirage stuff to me is like still fairly fresh. I'm not familiar with it, but I think I did actually do stuff regarding the ritual mechanics for Mirage.
Okay, an der Stelle denkt Sis noch, dass das quasi eine angeklatschte Zone die in der gleichen Map ist, right? Also Sis hat hier noch nicht auf dem Schirm, dass es eine neue Zone ist, richtig?
It's got this weird thing going on where if you had 4 rituals within your regular map, it will try to buff the ritual in the Mirage by so much that it would give you an equivalent amount of tribute. We had to do a bunch of weird maths to figure this out, but basically, if there's 4 rituals in your real map and there's 1 ritual in your Mirage.
Ich glaube, es wurde erst danach bringen. Nee, man hat es schon in dem ersten Announcement-Trailer gesehen. Also sie haben es nicht gesagt, aber man hat es gesehen. Ich habe da schon während des Announcements drauf hingewiesen. Weil da steht oben in der Tab-Dings steht da irgendwie so ein kryptischer Name drin, wenn er reingeht. Also, ne, die Zone ist irgendwie, keine Ahnung, er ist, glaube ich, irgendwie von Dunes oder so, oder weiß nicht mehr, in so eine Mirage reingegangen und dann sieht man richtig, wie das auf einmal einen neuen Namen kriegt, als würde man in eine neue Map reingehen.
Then that 1 ritual in your Mirage will be super juiced and it should give you an equivalent amount of tribute to what you had in your real map.
Also ich meine, wussten tut es auch nicht, aber es sah so
Okay,
aus auf jeden
cool.
Fall, als wenn es eine neue Zone war.
Do you have any other examples that you're willing to share about like how it affects and changes league mechanics? That was a really cool one.
Abyss is one where so often the Mirage area is much smaller than the original map, and an Abyss can path quite a distance. So an Abyss in a Mirage is often going to, if its pathing would have taken it outside of the bounds of the Mirage, it will instead just.
Warte mal, wir müssen die mal ein bisschen kleiner machen, glaube ich, die Untertitel. Untertitel, Option, Schriftgröße 100. Konnte man die nicht irgendwie sogar... Okay, ich dachte, man könnte die sogar irgendwie verschieben.
Just open up a pit and
Aber
start
so
spewing out
Gifts
tons
gehen.
of monsters on the spot.
Oh. Okay. And speaking of Abyss, does it or how does it interact with anything like an abyssal pit, syndicate research, anything that has like a separate zone, whether it's a loading one or not?
So what we term a child instance, which is what a Mirage is, it's a child of the instance that it was created in, cannot itself have further child instances. So that means that labyrinth trials, Volside areas, abyssal depths are not actually able to spawn in Mirages, no.
What about stuff like Alva that is it's a portal to something else, but it's not a loading screen?
Okay.
That's a less hard rule. Alva actually doesn't work, but that's Alva master missions in general don't get recreated in Mirages, but that's mostly because they have meta systems that need to be in a given state, and we can't actually predict the state that you'll be entering the Mirage in.
Danke.
So like say you've only done half of the encounters in the parent
Danke.
instance,
Yeah.
and then you enter the Mirage. If you're in a Jin, talking in the context of a Jin mission, we don't know the state of your board. Like it's in flux. because the state of the board is recalculated at the end of all of the Jin encounters, not necessarily at the end of each individual one within a map. So mostly for functional regions, master missions don't work, and then, like I said, anything that would send you to a further child instance doesn't get recreated.
What about Harvest?
Harvest works.
Oh, cool. Are you willing to talk about how Harvest works?
If the portal to the Harvest Grove, I guess it's what it's called, is within the Mirage, then you can enter it, and the entire grove is valid walkable space.
Well, yeah, but is it different in the Mirage?
Oh yeah, there's a new kind of seed.
Oh, okay.
New kind of
cool.
seed.
Okay, it does things.
We put it on the reveal page.
Yeah. All right. Are there any league mechanics that like completely don't work? Do you want to expand more on anything else that like isn't workable?
Warte mal, hat er gerade gesagt, wir haben es auf die Reveal-Page gepackt?
I think the only one that doesn't fit in the earlier list is the Viridian Wildwood doesn't show up in Mirages. There is a wish to add wisps though.
Okay. And what about Delve? Does that get like changed as well, like the sulfide piles?
That's master missions in general don't show up in Mirages. So
right, that makes sense.
I'm curious, how does a delirium mirror work?
I would have to double check this because I requested it work this way, but I haven't looked at the issue in a while. It hasn't come back to me. But the intention is that if there is a delirium mirror in the overworld that you interacted with, then there is one in the Mirage.
Whoa. Okay. Does Mirages interact with the Valdo tier 17 maps on the puzzle boxes?
You can do a Mirage and Valdo map, but you won't get the reward again.
Okay.
So you'll be able to do content again, but not the like special, guaranteed mage blood or whatever.
Yeah. You can still be sent to the void.
Yes.
Yeah,
it inherits all the map stats of the parent instance, and that is a map stat. So yes.
Right. Does Nightmare maps and Originator maps have like both functionalities of the Mirage? Like, can you go through like the small Mirage, or can you basically double the map like that type of Mirage?
That is at odds with Originator maps, because the modifier that makes a map an entire Mirage map is taking up the same space as the modifier that makes it an Originator map. And that's kind of purposeful because we wanted to have two different strategies you could be pursuing in the end game rather than just stacking every strategy on top of each other.
Oh, what about Nightmare maps?
Nightmare maps work with Mirages, yes.
And even the like
or
doubling
what
it? Like, well, so you could have like, I can't remember, or I actually don't fully know the fully name of it, but there's like, you said in the Q&A with Ziggy that you can do a full Mirage, right? Like fully Mirage map.
I don't see any reason that wouldn't work with the Nightmare map, but I'm not 100% certain without testing it.
And that's why
Mirage map.
Well, that's why I was
Like,
curious
have you got
about
a fully Mirage map?
Uh-huh.
Fully Mirage maps have a chance to drop from map bosses within a Mirage.
So are you a little bit concerned
question.
that makes it back to tier 17 meta again, that you can fully Mirage those?
Sie haben danach auch nochmal die Monsterdichte geändert, glaube ich, ne, bei Tier 17.
Well, you're not able to apply the Egan juice, the
Nach dem
blobs,
Interview,
as
oder?
lovingly termed, to them. So
Laut
I
Patch Notes zumindest.
think it should be fine, but that is a valid concern.
Okay, well, I'm glad that's brought up at least and like thought about. That's definitely a concern. Another thing, we did see Cyrus in a Mirage.
Egensaft, ja.
Are you willing to share any other like large buses like that? Like, can we see Ubers?
There is a wish that spawns. There is a wish, a relatively rare wish that is T16 plus only, that spawns a random feared member in your map.
Mhm.
And my follow-up question then is, do they have their original drop tables?
Okay.
They can drop their uniques.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm guessing that's so if it's spawns Cyrus, I'm guessing that's the normal version of Cyrus and not the Uber version.
Yes, not Uber. The version that would show up in Feared, which I don't think is the Uber version.
No, but you can witness both, so I figured it was worth asking. Cool. So we have Mirage items are coming with like new uniques and the Coin of Restoration. Now, my question here is, we did have a sort of similar system with faded uniques from Prophecy, which altered, limb split into Cauterizer, where Cauterizer is just better than Limb Split in every way. Is this going to be a similar type system where the restored unique is just better in every way, or are they both usable for different purposes?
Oh, das ist
I'm
interessant,
sure,
das Thema.
you know, players will define a meta where some of them are more valuable or stronger than others. But the intent is that
Die Übersetzungen waren da jetzt gerade ein bisschen off, deswegen will ich kurz ein bisschen was dazu sagen. Da geht es um also es gibt jetzt ja die Möglichkeit, quasi Uniques umzuwandeln, um eine alternative Version von dem Unique zu kriegen. Genau, wir haben, glaube ich, nicht so viele Details darüber, deswegen finde ich es interessant. Gespannt, wo die Frage jetzt noch hinführt.
are, you know, roughly equivalent. Now, given that they do very different things, it's kind of hard to match that intent. You know, one will probably be a bit stronger than the other.
Yeah.
But no, it's not meant to be like, you know,
Okay, it's kein Upgrade.
You know, thing A, and then when you use the coin on it, it's thing A plus plus.
Yeah.
They're meant to be meaningfully different and equally viable.
Cool.
Yeah, from what I've seen, they look like generally the two uniques are for completely different builds. So, for example, Rustbite is like a poison themed sword, and then the fire equivalent is an ignite themed sword, or a fire dot sword.
Rustbite was the internal name for the unique sword that we showed off in the Q&A, or in the live stream.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I like that. I like that. Next up, I really want to ask about Streams of the Desiccated, which in a lot of ways is competing hard with, or even replacing, Mage Blood. Is it divinable? Like, can I divine Resistance Shrine to Massive Shrine? I guess that's my first question.
No, the shrine will not change with a divine orb. It works sort of like a Watcher's Eye in that respect.
Awesome. And what shrines are we not getting? Obviously, Divine Shrine, I guess.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, definitely not Divine Shrine.
What about
Er gibt mir so Bad Vibes irgendwie. Also so positiv Bad Vibes. Er ist ein richtiger
really
Bad Boy.
I mean, it's going to be data mined on release, I'm sure. But
what about, can you tell us if Echoing is on there?
Well, all I can say is I still have the balance issue on
Scheinbar,
there. It's like the
ja,
only
scheinbar.
unique balance issue I have left. And we were talking quite a lot last week about it, because we're basically looking at this thing and we're like, have we just power crept Mage Blood?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of interesting things you can do with it, because it's basically, the downside is it only applies to Shrine while you have no Flask active. But to be honest, there's like a lot of ways you can still take advantage of that downside. Like, for example, you can take the King of the Mist +1 ring slot, and an extra ring is certainly juicy. You can use Tincture still, you can use instant flasks. So the downside isn't as punitive as it may first seem on paper. And then if you look at what the shrines actually grant, like a ton of them grant completely cracked buffs.
Warte mal, Tinctures gelten nicht als Flasks, oder was? Oder habe ich das gerade falsch verstanden?
You'd also, unfortunately, this is a little bit of a combo item, because you're always going to be comboing it with something like the Gal. You might use Blunderball, but basically you'd want to stack as much shrine effect as possible on top. So yeah, there's certainly, this item is crazy, and the balance is still in progress, and it's probably going to end up being giga rare for like very specific combinations, but
good.
Yeah, there are crazy shrines on it for sure.
I gave Andrew a problem.
Awesome. No, I'm super excited. It does look super fun, and at least Mage, like, or the belt is a very competitive slot, right? So that is a good thing.
Sure.
Cool. Glad we got that. Don't nerf it too much. It looks super fun. Very big fan. Right. So
one thing I did want to say, because I mentioned this on, like, you know, I was asked a question in Discord, but I want to mention it on like a more public platform, is the just to confirm it, the belt chooses an offensive and a defensive shrine. So you're never going to get, you know, like brutal and diamond together. Double offensive buffs doesn't happen, double defensive doesn't happen.
Okay, cool. Not even a small chance?
No, it's one offensive, one defensive.
That'd be cool. Acceleration echoing. All right. Well, speaking of power, the next topic that I want to cover a little bit is borrowed power. And we've been seeing that, like, that's been the meta for a while now. And the main borrowed power we're getting this league is the imbued gems. which are also directly competing with 21 gems.
Ja, Elehit würde ich gleich einfach überspringen.
I wanted to hear you talk a little bit about
kein
the
Quatsch
design intent
zu
here
verbreiten.
when you're choosing like the borrowed power and how it's going to be implemented.
Well, I wouldn't say there's necessarily like this is the only borrowed power you're getting this league, because there's a ton of new currency items coming from Mirage, which are all giving, in essence, like a little bit of borrowed power here and there.
Okay.
But yes, these imbued gems are definitely one of like the bigger sources. They also tend to favor attack builds, I'd say, because they care less about getting that level 21 as opposed to just being level 20.
Yeah. Fair. You have like a baseline for what sort of power level, I guess maybe in like a more damage sense, that you're aiming for borrowed power, where I'd say, on top of my head, I would say Mercenary is probably where we had the most borrowed power, right? With probably the Doriani thing not maybe being superintended. But do you have like a rough number in mind for borrowed power per league?
Well, I wouldn't even necessarily say that we need to have borrowed power every league, but it completely depends on the league mechanic, to be honest. It's like Mercenaries could allow...
Baum, Dankeschön für den verschenkten Sub. Auch danke an alle anderen, die vorhin noch reingesubbt haben. Danke an Black Reaper, an Kaldor, an Pascal. Vielen, vielen Dank, Leute. Dankeschön.
For a lot more borrowed power because it actually made things more difficult at the same time. Whereas most leagues' borrowed power are just pure power creep in that sense. But I don't think there's like any hard and fast rules here, to be honest.
Like, just for clarity's sake, I guess, like the place that imbued gems came from, as far as the design goal that I wanted to fulfill, is I wanted people to have 2 decision points when choosing a wish, not just like what the wish does in the area, but the imbued gems all come from the sigils associated with the wish. Like if you want to get the red imbued gem, you click the wish with the red sigil, and that's what causes monsters in that area to have a chance to drop the red imbued gem.
Yeah.
Or sorry, the red currency that creates them. And that means that like maybe there's a wish that you wouldn't normally otherwise take, but you're trying to farm for the red gem, so you're going to take it. And I wanted to have 2 axes of choice for all of the wishes, and that's where this came from. And it just also happened to be like, oh, and this can be, you know, some of the borrowed power that we might want to put in the league otherwise.
And are these going to be fairly plentiful, as in you'll get like a decent amount per day? Because obviously hitting the exact gem you want looks like it's going to be quite hard, and a lot of people are worried that this is going to be something that's like 2 or 5 divine per coin.
I can't really predict how expensive they'll end up being. I would say also it's hard to say how many you'll get per day, because some people run 2 maps in a day and some people run 50.
Yeah.
You definitely could get 1 or more a day at a reasonable rate if you're playing quite a bit. I don't know. It's a rabbit hole question.
That's
kind
fair.
of
a tough one.
Puh,
I was
okay.
actually going to have this a rapid fire.
Okay, diese Support-Dinger könnten also wirklich teuer werden. Warte mal, er hat gerade gesagt, mehr als 1 pro Tag ist möglich. Okay, wahrscheinlich unterschätzt er, was die Leute kochen werden. Sagen wir mal, dass man, wenn man viel zockt, so 5 am Tag, vielleicht so 5 am Tag oder so kriegen wird. Dann werden die Dinger aber schon ganz schön teuer.
Question, but I care about it so much
Also
that I moved.
für alle, die vielleicht jetzt nicht so ganz mitverfolgt haben, es geht um diese Coins, die einen zusätzlichen Support-Gem auf ein Gem machen und ihn dabei corrupten quasi. Und man kann ja nicht aussuchen, welchen Support. Das heißt, ja, man wird wahrscheinlich nicht sofort das treffen, was man haben will.
It up, because we're talking about borrowed power. So probably my favorite item of
Wer
all
läuft
time
nur 50
is
Maps am
that which
Tag?
was taken, and it was taken from us. Is there any chance that it can become that which was given back? It was so cool.
Well, I can't... Well, to be fair, the unique art still exists. Because I'm pretty sure that ended up being reused as the new jewel from the King and the Mist.
It is.
The lighter meaning. But I think that which was taken was definitely a borrowed power source from the Affliction League. It sort of only made sense in the context of charms as well. It was sort of giving you extra charms on top of what you could already get from the Primalist Ascendancy. And it wasn't really doing anything novel. It was the charm system was just like a thrown together fun passive tree mechanic that was just stealing effects from all over the game. It isn't really providing anything new. And another point to that is PoE 1 sort of has a little bit of a problem where at the high end game, you basically just stack a ton of limit 1 unique jewels. We already have so many of them. You've got like Watcher's Eye and your Forbidden Jewels and your Timeless Jewels. So I wouldn't really want to just keep on adding more and more limit 1 jewels that every single builder is required to end up using.
Yeah, that's fair. I just, yeah, I loved it a little bit because of the almost like soulbound-like quality that it like, especially in SSF, it really approaches what you're doing next very differently. I did want to mention that as well, actually. I have always generally been against soulbound, but you guys use that, in my opinion, in a really good way for Sanctum, where the relics were like soulbound power, and I guess part of that is why they were allowed to be so powerful. Is that something you guys have discussed bringing back in the future? Not necessarily with Sanctum relics, but with another mechanic.
I'm generally of the opinion that I prefer most character power is tradable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was fine to experiment with it for a league, but I don't think there's really been any discussions of bringing something similar back. I don't know how you feel.
I kind of agree. One of the things that drew me to Path of Exile in the first place was the, which is funny because I now play mostly group found or solo self-found, but was definitely the economy aspect of it. Like, I really like being able to find weird niches in the economy and try and exploit them and take advantage of them. And, items that are untradeable can never be that niche. So that's not to say that it's like never something that we'll ever experiment with again. It didn't have that kind of reaction.
Boah, wir haben so ein Glück, dass Grindy Games entwicklermäßig sehr auf der Economy-Line ist. Stellt ihr euch vor, PoE würde aus SSF-Perspektive gemacht werden. Ach du Scheiße.
But there has to be a really good reason.
Yeah.
Generally, the assumption is character power, outside of your ascendancy and passive true and such, obviously, itemized character power should be tradable.
Cool. So I noticed that was pretty much the only time that cropped up. Final question about borrowed power. Have you ever considered Foulborn, Forbidden Flame, and Flesh with the Frisia ascendancy? They're quite liked by the community, but they outside of Frisia, obviously now we have the Scion, but outside of that, they're not really used.
Yeah, I think the thing is, when we were coming up with the Frisian ascendancies, they were sort of just like what we could gather from all the other places in the game and throw them together and make a cohesive ascendancy out of that. So a lot of the effects from the Frisian ascendancies are from the base ascendancies and from a bunch of other unique items. So for that reason, I wouldn't really think it makes sense for them to be part of the core game because they aren't really their own unique thing necessarily.
Yeah. Makes sense. Final Mirage related question. So most seasons or leagues that we get now, we do have some sort of like league boss. I can't remember the name of the boss that we're getting this time. Suresh. Yeah. So generally with bosses like these, they're at like quite a low power level compared to Ubers. Do you think we'll ever see a Uber version of a league boss that is like actual on par with the 10 Ubers?
We sort of did that a little bit in the T17 Nightmare maps. You'll notice that all of the bosses there are just like Lysair and Katarina and Utrecht and all that. But as opposed to like standalone Ubers that don't have any like modifiers in the area themselves, like I guess we could do that at some point. It would be a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against it. I think though, what can often be lost is, in conversations with more entrenched and experienced players, is that Ubers are really hard. I know that, people can definitely get builds to the point where they just like AFK stand and tank them, or they, 4-shot them in like 10 seconds or whatever. But most players aren't doing that. And we don't necessarily want the new shiny league mechanic content that less experienced player might be diving headfirst into to be something that is basically outside of their grasp entirely. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that we have the boss balance for the league mechanic bosses in
Also ich
exactly
für
the
mich
right
schon,
place.
ja, Schwamm.
Maybe they do need to be a little tougher.
Gems
but,
gucken wir gleich auch noch.
Yeah. Also, it does feel strange, and I can't come up with a good reason why it feels strange to me. And usually, one of the things I've kind of learned in design is usually if I can't come up with a good reason why I feel the way I do, that usually means there isn't one, and it's a subjective thing that I probably shouldn't hold on to. But it feels strange to me to introduce a boss and its Uber version in the same patch at the same time.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like, I feel like Suresh within the league should probably be a static difficulty, and then if it goes core later on, then we can do all sorts of weird things like Ubers.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess I also thought of it from the point of view of, for example, like Exarch, right? You have the quest version that's like doable a lot easier so that it is more accessible for people that are like getting there for the first time. But that might be like, especially for advanced players, a little bit too easy. I just wanted to bring it up as a thought. Next, we're pretty much done with Mirage there, except for rapid fire questions later. But
Das sind die
next
zwei
up, I
eigentlich,
wanna
haben sich
talk
am Anfang
about
vorgestellt,
game and
Schwamm.
skill balance.
Das eine ist
Particularly
Octavian, der andere
starting with
ist
the league start meta.
der
And I'd say
Entwickler, der die meiste Zeit mit PoE 1 verbringt.
But league
Im ganzen
starters
Studio.
have been, with some exceptions, it's been pretty stale for quite a while. So I just want to hear you talk about that a little bit, especially a thing that's brought up a lot is just like things that are very little played, just give them a 20, 30, 40% buff. Like there are things that we don't really see used at all.
It's something that I definitely want to focus on more in the next few patches. I feel pretty strongly about it too, but it's also something you have to be really careful about because for a lot of people, leveling with whatever skill they've become really familiar and with leveling, be it Caustic Arrow or, I don't know, Poison Concoction, whatever. There's, I can list a dozen different good leveling skills, is very comfy. And it's like an easy way to get into a new league where maybe the end game has changed and there's a new league mechanic and there's a bunch of skill buffs and nerfs and stuff. And, you have this old reliable you can fall back on. So like, how do you make a leveling meta less stale while also making sure that there's still old reliables for people to fall back on if they don't want to have to approach leveling with completely fresh eyes because leveling isn't their most favorite part of the game,
Right.
And I'm not saying there's no changes that can be made, but it is a hard balance to strike.
Sure, but that's a particular concern when it comes to nerfs, right? Like I think what a lot of people want is to see like a big buff to skills that are completely underused or hasn't been touched for a very long time. Not necessarily that you need to have everything perfectly balanced.
Well,
I
would say that in the past couple of leagues we haven't done as much meta balance as we've typically done in, historically. Like, for example, the focus this league was more we were doing a whole batch of like holy skills, so taking a close look at everything related to that like holy archetype that already exists in the game. So you'll see there's quite a lot of buffs in the patch to things like Dominating Blow and Absolution and Static Strike and Holy Flame Totem. So we certainly have touched a lot of skills. We just haven't touched all of them, of course. It's mostly a time constraint thing, to be honest. Like, I would love to be able to go through and literally just change every single skill in the game every patch. But from my point of view, I mean, this might be a failing, but I have very little loss aversion. So if Poisonous Concoction for some reason got deleted, I wouldn't care at all. I just want.
It's a dangerous.
It's a dangerous thing to say. But
I love that personally.
I'm attracted to the game because I like coming back each league and it just feeling completely different. I like change. Change is what I like.
Okay.
So I would love to just be able to like massively, radically change everything without any thought for the consequence.
Ich habe ja schon häufiger gesagt, dass ich es geil, also irgendwie geil finden würde, wenn so Skills irgendwie so cyclen würden. So ähnlich wie Maps. Also alles, was halt geil ist und woran die Leute sich gewöhnt haben, so diese ganze Confi-Geschichte, kommt einfach komplett raus. Und wir müssen uns neue Sachen überlegen. Nur das Problem ist, macht man das 3-mal hintereinander, ist auch alles durch einmal. Und sie müssten trotzdem wieder Änderungen machen. Und da fängt dann halt das Problem an. Aber ich check auf jeden Fall, was er meint. Dieses Feeling, dass man blind reingeht, was wir zum Beispiel zuletzt oft in PoE 2 hatten, weil sich so viel geändert hat, dass man quasi nichts wirklich testen konnte, weil neues Support-System, keine Ahnung, also in PoE 2 sind wir noch so am Anfang des Spiels, dass man immer wieder in den letzten 2 Patches zumindest das Gefühl hatte, okay, irgendwie gibt es so viel Neues, klar, okay, du konntest immer Lightning Arrow reingehen, check ich, aber wenn man das außen vor lässt, dann war schon immer sehr viel Neues und das Feeling ist irgendwie schon cool.
Of how people feel about if something's gone up or down and that type of thing.
See, but you got to temper that with making sure there's, all reliable fallbacks for people to come back to. And it's basically like what Andrew said at the start of that, where like it really is just a matter of constraints. Like we have, GGG has a very rapid development cycle. We have 4 months in which to make all the changes that we want to do in the next expansion, and there was a lot in 3.28. We just didn't get a massive skill rework into it, but definitely it's something that's on our radar.
Is it something that you think you could ever do mid-league, that where you're just like, you know what, these 10 skills, they're getting 10% more damage?
I mean, even if it's just purely buffs, you end up with FOMO, right? Because people say like, oh, I would have started that. Oh, I would have played that. I would have adapted to the economy differently. I would have adapted to my strategy differently if, and like maybe if you really made really insignificant changes, that isn't the case. But then why are you making the changes?
Right, but these changes are the same for everybody, so I don't think that is too much of an issue. Like,
yeah, maybe I'm overstating it, but I'm personally very cautious when it comes to mid-league changes that actually change balance and content rather than just,
bug check ich auch irgendwie.
You did bring up new...
Wenn du, du hast hier gerade okay, pass auf, Szenario, du hast deinen League-Start vollbracht, du siehst Shockwave, neuer Transfigure Gem, ist übelst krass, geht übelst ab, du levelst einen neuen Charakter, kaufst dir das ganze Gear, ist übelst teuer alles gewesen, weil alle das machen. Dann hast du das gerade zusammen alles, machst die ersten paar Maps, dann kommt Grinding Gear Games mit einem Patch und bufft irgendwie, keine Ahnung, Dual Strike um 8000% und hat jetzt übelst viel AOE. Und auf einmal ist dein Skill, den du dir teuer, also dein Bild, den du dir teuer zusammengekauft hast, halt nichts mehr wert, weil es was viel, viel Besseres gibt. So. Also, das ist die Argumentation, glaube ich, von Octavian, warum er sagt, okay, Mid-League-Buffs können halt auch problematisch werden. Check ich auch. Würde, glaube ich, auch viele verärgern. Während der League dran zu arbeiten, für die nächste League, ja, das könnte man machen, aber ich glaube, sie arbeiten dann halt einfach am PoE 2 wieder. Oder?
What sort of baseline,
also in der Masse zumindest.
Or how do you try to avoid that they're not like dead on arrival? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I can sort of talk about how a skill is balanced. So, for example, in this patch cycle, Octavian designed the majority of the holy skills. So, basically, he'd make the skill, and then he'd give me an issue to sanity check the balance. So, how I'd go about that typically is I wouldn't even look.
Die haben doch 2 separate Teams jetzt. Ja, aber ich glaube trotzdem, dass in beiden Teams Flex-Leute sind. Also, ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, also klar, es wird ein festes PoE1-Team geben, aber ich glaube trotzdem, dass es in diesem Team halt, also, oder zwischen diesen Teams Flex-Leute gibt, was wahrscheinlich der Großteil der Leute ist, die da arbeiten, wo sie gebraucht werden. Weil warum soll es einen Sounddesigner für PoE 1 geben und einen für PoE 2? Also, das gleiche gilt auch für Animationen und so weiter.
Look at damage first. Damage is the last thing you look at for the balance of a skill. So mostly it's check that it's functional, check that what all of its interactions are, like support gems, etc. Figure out what all the scaling factors are, like for example, does it get more damage if you scale up area of effect or multiple projectiles or duration, that type of thing. And then basically play test it at a variety of, well, I typically test in like early game, I'll usually test it like the docks in Act 3. And then late game, I'll probably be testing at like level 80 and like a T10ish map.
Okay.
So not like super duper in-game builds for these at all, but basically I'll just like mess around with my damage until I feel comfortable to see if it like clears fine.
Yeah.
So basically get all of the crit chance, area of effect, all of those bells and whistles in place before even starting to look at the damage. And then after that, it's sort of like comparing to pre-existing skills is usually a good way to start, as in getting a baseline for the balance. And I will say that I typically try to set the numbers a bit higher than what I think is correct relative to pre-existing skills in the game.
Right.
Like, for example, in the last set of skills we released, Kinetic Fusillade is very strong in my opinion.
Checkt ihr eigentlich, dass dieser Mann für alles verantwortlich ist, was wir so skilltechnisch in den letzten 5 Jahren oder wahrscheinlich sogar mehr hatten, so in PoE 1? Für jeden Gem? Er macht so, Damage Numbers für neue Shockwave Transfigured ist so.
And I did league start
Übelst lustig irgendwie.
And I might have forgot to nerf it this patch, but...
What, I forgot. Are you starting it again?
Nah. I'll be playing something on the Templar for sure.
Okay. Well, oh, carry on.
I was just going to say, just to give context to that damage last thing, it's not because it's the least
Was heißt
important
Dogs
factor, it's
viable?
because if you don't have all the other factors in place, then you can't judge the damage.
Yeah.
Because like, if the AoE of the skill does impact single target damage and it's not correct and it needs to be adjusted or changed, then it doesn't matter what damage you set at that point. If you go back and change something earlier in the chain, so to speak, now you no longer know what the output is. So you need to get all of the inputs correct and then you can judge the output.
Makes sense. With new skills, you feel that with Kinetic Rain, we saw that it was very, very strong in the preview when Ziggy played it, etc. And then it later got nerfed. Are you ever worried that you're trying to be too safe so that sometimes new skills are underperforming a little bit because you don't want them to completely dominate either?
Well, I sort of disagree with the sentiment that Kinetic Rain is a weak skill.
Well, no, but it did get nerfed before we got to play. It was more.
Well, the thing is, the mistake there was that the player should never have seen the gem with that numbers, which was my fault. So
that was my mistake. Yeah. Like as Andrew said, I usually will design the skill and set it up and then send it to him for balance review. It did not go to Andrew for balance review before it went to Ziggy for gameplay footage, and
right.
That was a mistake on my part.
Cool. I was just curious about it. I wanted to bring it up. Well, that's it for skill gems there. So I have an Ignite related question. So Defiled Forces was changed massively, and that did have a bit of a stranglehold on Ignite, where it was sort of like the correct way to play it. So changing that is good. However, that does put Ignite maybe in a lot of ways behind other dot archetypes. Do you have any plans to like rework Ignite now that Defiled Forces is gone?
Well, it's more of a question of like, usually we don't decide what we're doing for balance like straight away. As in, like, we're starting to figure out what we want to do for 329 now, but we're not necessarily figuring out what we're doing for 329 balance yet. We'd rather see how things play out at 328 launch, and then after a few weeks we'll be able to judge like what are the type of things that no one's playing, what are the type of things that are weak, and what are the type of things we should be like focusing on improving for 329. So Ignite surely might be one of those things, but not to say there might be new exceptional sports, there might be new uniques, there might be other new interactions which do cause Ignite to be like quite strong this league. But yeah, it's certainly something that we'd look at if it's weak, like you say.
And I would say that we have more of a structured approach to that than maybe we've had in the past, where like now we have this structure where we look at the worst, the least played couple of ascendancies every league and try and get some buffs in there. Probably what we need to do is start, looking at the list of skills and find the ones down at the bottom. Maybe we need to even extend that out to like looking for archetypes that are underplayed. And yeah, Ignite could be on that list. It's something that now that we have this like dedicated PoE1 team split, we can be focusing more resources on that earlier in the development cycle, and so catch more things like this.
That's very good to hear. Also, apparently, Vira sent me a message about chat. They really want some assurances on the new skills, and he said people really want to play the new skills. Can you ask to make sure, like, are you happy with the balance of the new skills? Like, are they strong and good for starting?
Well, I can say for Holy Strike in particular, before I'd even started balance testing it, one of our QA was like, this skill needs to be nerfed by 4 times on the Twilight Strand. So
Okay.
trust me, it is still better than Glacial Hammer was for Templar start, but yeah, it's a pretty weird scaling skill though. Like it scales similarly to Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection, so.
Cool. Oh, that sounds neat. Well, I hopefully that is assuring for new people. Next up is the most important question. Transfigured Explosive Arrow.
Warte mal, warum fragt er Transfigured Explosive Arrow? Who cares? Transfigured Winter Orb, was ist damit?
I was going over options with this with a couple of people in QA, and I have an idea that I want to pitch to programmers.
Okay, cool.
That I will not say the specifics of because it may not exist if it can't work.
Yeah, okay. Cool. I'm excited.
But more broadly, rather than just specifically on Transfigured EA, like I said in the Q&A, it's a kind of a personal crusade of mine that every active skill in the game have at least one alt gem variant, ideally eventually 2. Because I really like the alt gem system. I think it's very cool, and I would like to keep iterating on it.
Yeah, just last week, one of our like senior monster designers, he loves Fireball. He'll just play it every single league, and he's been petitioning me for a long time for various transfigured Fireball versions. So one of our other designers, like after our discussion at lunch, went back to his desk and just straight up versioned the issue to 329. So I guess it's in the version. It must be happening.
Yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
have. There's actually a handful that were partially implemented or, at least designed for 328 that didn't quite make it in. So, we already have some transfigured skills that have some work done for 329. Like, there will be more transfigured skills in 329.
Very cool. That's exciting.
Winter Orb ist dabei. Ich sag's
Actually,
euch.
I wanted to, while we're talking about gems, one thing that was asked about a lot was elemental hit and the new breach ascendancy that converts like cold and lightning to fire. I can't remember the exact word.
Okay, das Ding müssen wir jetzt skippen, glaube ich, ne? Weil das wurde alles dementiert nach dem Interview. Ich will's nicht nochmal gucken, damit Leute nicht denken, yo, krass, ich starte Elemental Hit und dann...
on it.
It way where it's granting, and the conclusion to that discussion was it's going to be busted for 328 potentially.
Context. Damage gained as extra is not when a ring text.
Yeah, options and Path of Exile. We have this confusion as well. Also note that any added damage that is local to a weapon is not converted for this ascendancy. There has been a reminder text added to the bloodline for this. It's just historically...
Ich glaube, wir sind bei einem anderen Thema.
Basically, what Mark 1 told me is...
Mark 1.
It's always been wrong on weapons, and it should never have been described as added damage in the first place.
Yeah.
But it is that way, yeah. So any local added damage on a weapon is actually base damage and not affected by this bloodline.
Okay.
When I pitched this stat to Mark 1, he gave me a very withering look.
Yeah, I mean, especially with like new players, I've seen so many new players trying like Ethereal Knives or Blade Vortex with like adds physical damage and stuff, and I'm like, no. So yeah, I see the confusion. Next up, when it comes to balance, and especially when it comes to like the new coins, there are items like Chains of Command that add an inherent ability to an item that isn't a gem that we can like put a new link on. Are items like that being left a little behind this patch?
I mean, arguably, generally speaking, League mechanics will favor certain builds over others, so I don't see that as like a huge issue. I mean, that said, there is a quirk of how the imbued gems work, which is potentially relevant for skills like, I don't know, Ice Storm from Whispering Ice, where so there's this limitation where you can't put more than one imbued gem into a set of socket links. So like into your chest piece or your boots or your gloves, you can only have one imbued gem at a time. Yeah. And the reason for that is because the support effect on the imbued gem is a support, as in it is supporting everything in the links. So if you had another active skill in there and you had, say, Fire Pen imbued, both active skills are supported by Fire Pen, not just the one with the imbued skill.
Yeah.
And so you can't have multiple imbued, because then you'd be able to have, what, 6 links in your chess piece? That's a little much. Or 6.
Oh, das ist interessant, oder? Ist das nicht für so Gems wie, also so Mana Forge Setups und sowas, Mana Forge Arrow Setups übelst relevant? Weil man kann, also der Support gilt dann halt für alle aktiven Skills da drin. Hm.
6 links, regardless. So if you have an active skill socketed in
Das
your chain of
Scryer
commands
spannend,
with
ja,
a support
genau.
effect, it
Solche
would
Sachen.
affect the skill from the chain of commands, I think. It's going to affect everything in the support links, at least, or in the link group.
Okay, ich hätte gedacht, dass das wirklich nur für den Skill
and
gilt.
just to make sure, like,
Das ist krass.
just to like double triple check, like if you had like multiple war cries, but they're unlinked entirely, like it's per item that you can have these, right? It's not like per link.
It is per item, yes.
Yeah.
So you can have one imbued gem in your boots, one in your gloves, one in your helmet, one in your chest, so on.
Yeah. I was this French guy wanted me to double check. Well.
Dieser Franzose.
Another question I have is Spellslinger, Auto Exert, etc. They reserve mana and cost mana to use.
God.
I just want to hear you talk about your philosophy on this and why. Like, is that necessary?
Well, I guess the philosophy is more like, should triggered skills cost mana, which we decided yes they should a while back. Now, how does Spellslinger differ to something like Cast on Crit? Because you could argue that the cost on Spellslinger is the reservation.
Yeah.
Well, the cost on Cast on Crit is the trigger condition. So they have, to me, the reservation of Spellslinger is, and Auto Exert, is sort of like, that is the cost you're paying for the easy trigger condition, whereas the mana cost should still be paid on all skills. I mean, you could argue war cries are a little different because they're not spells, so maybe our trigger philosophy is different for war cries compared to spells, but precedents like the Eternal Apple, I guess.
Right.
Well, yeah, war cries I could go either way, but I think for all spells you should be paying the cost for them.
The big cost is also a gem slot, though, right? That is like, especially with how powerful gems are and the new ones, is quite a lot of power there.
Yeah, but I guess ideally the damage multiplier and the cooldown and the reservation costs on Spellslinger would all be balanced around that. We did make pretty big buffs to Spellslinger last patch, I believe, when we looked at wands.
Yes, there was. But like, for example, something like Mana Force Arrows doesn't have a reservation; it only has the mana cost. Not that we want one.
But yeah, it's a little bit hard to compare because you're comparing triggered spells to triggered attacks. Not to say that Mana Forged Arrow has a very unique cost. Its cost is spending mana, so that is its cost as opposed to just a straight up reservation. Yeah.
Fair. Right. So
Okay.
guard skills when it comes to balance. Obviously, last patch we had the breach hands and stuff, so that was interesting there. But they aren't something that's staying in the game. So especially Molten Shell and Arcane Cloak are very dominant there. Are there any plans to add more new guard skills or rework others?
I feel like historically there was a time in the game where armor was perceived as being very, very weak. And to me, Molten Shells being very strong was almost a band-aid to armor being quite weak. And armor has progressively gotten stronger over time. And not to say that it's not like super duper strong, but
yeah,
Molten Shell has had a couple of nerfs, but it's still like, yeah, it's a perk of playing an armor build. But the issue to me is that it's sort of like, if you're playing armor, you should be using Molten Shell. Likewise, Arcane Cloak is similar in the sense that one of the benefits for having, well, the problem with having Mind Over Matter or your entire mana pool is your defenses. You don't get to use as many defensive auras such as Grace and Determination and Discipline and all that. So, it to me is like another axis for, this is part of the set of all things that make up a mana defense. Whether or not mana-based defenses or armor-based defenses are stronger than other ones, it's like I wouldn't really
Path of Exile 1 startet am
either
Freitag.
way, but it's more the case of, I guess, philosophically, should a guard skill be providing that much percentage of your total defense to your archetype? So, like, arguably what we could do is nerf Arcane Cloak and Molten Shell and then buff up armor and then buff up mana defenses, for example. Not to say that we will. I guess it just hasn't really been on our radar.
Well, I guess a lot of people
Dark
also
Skills
want
is
more
an
like.
interesting design space, though. I'm not like, against making new ones.
Cool. It's also I know a lot of people want like a dex-based one, like more dex-based card seals.
It's a difficult design space though, because it's hard to come up with ones that aren't just shield bubble but bigger. But there's definitely stuff you could do there. It's neat.
Yeah.
I want to think of something now.
Yeah, maybe something with like using your spell suppression or something for your ovation. And speaking of gems, awakened gems are being sunset in favor of exceptional support gems. Can you talk a little bit about why the change, what this allows you to do, and also people are really curious if we still have regular GMP.
A regular GMP or awakened GMP? Just clarifying.
Is it only awakened GMP now? Like, can we still get level 38 greater multiple projectiles?
So greater volley and greater multiple projectiles are the two greater gems that are still just in the regular drop pool. They haven't changed their location at all. I think we did rename lesser multiple projectiles to multiple projectiles though. Yeah. Although awakened GMP is sunsetted, we don't have a exceptional version of greater multiple projectiles.
At all. Interesting.
No. Well, yes. The design philosophy behind the exceptional gems is they're supposed to be like
so anders werden, also
more transformative. So just adding an extra projectile to a support to me doesn't.
Ich habe über genau das gleiche gestern auf dem Klo ich weiß nicht, warum ich euch erzähle, dass ich auf dem Klo drüber nachgedacht, aber ich habe auf dem Klo drüber nachgedacht und ich dachte mir so, okay, die Exceptionals sollen transformative sein. Das heißt, was könnte das für das Projectile-Thema sein? Ich glaube, also ich bin gestern auch für mich zu der Antwort gekommen, so eigentlich kann es nicht sein, dass sie irgendwie einfach einen plus 5 Projektile oder sowas machen, weil das wäre ja überhaupt nicht transformative. Also sie müssten ja irgendwas dabei machen. Deswegen dachte ich, dass es zum Beispiel sowas geben könnte wie fügt 6 Projektile hinzu, aber der Skill kann von keiner anderen Quelle Projektile dazu bekommen. Sowas in der Richtung oder sowas. Oder Return oder ja, irgendwie sowas. Also es müsste halt irgendwas verändern sich, ne? Doppelt Projektile, aber weniger Schaden. Ja, aber das ist so einfach. Oder doppelt Projektile wäre natürlich tatsächlich, könnte man drüber nachdenken, ja. Einfach die Verdopplung der Projektile.
Really scream as being like super duper transformative.
There is an exceptional that was projectile. Additional projectile related though, right?
There are a few exceptional gems related to projectiles. Like I think there's a greater chain and a greater fork, and there's specifically one related to spell projectiles.
Yeah, there was one that was adding them. I don't remember specifically what it did though. Andrew did the exceptional support gem implementation, so I only have seen issues and know things in passing.
Well, but is greater multi-strike not necessarily transformative, right? It is just more power than the original gem.
Okay, well, yeah, this is where you're getting into a fine line, but greater multi-strike is a little bit more transformative because you are committing yourself to an extra refeed.
Right. Okay.
The math on it is also a little bit weird because you start off from a lower baseline, but your final strike of your combo is stronger compared to the base gem.
Oh.
Greater Spell Echo has a similar thing going on, I think.
Right. Well, can you talk a little bit about like the design philosophy for like changing these? And what that allows you to do?
Well, from like a rewards point of view, it allows us to basically give life to a bunch of bosses that may not have very valuable rewards. Not to say that all of these exceptional gems will end up being like 5 divine on trade or anything. But one of the nice things was just spreading it all over the Atlas and basically adding rewards to basically all of the in-game bosses that you do access through the Atlas. Another fun thing about them is you could start from like a lore first design a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like you'd be like, oh, what is the King in the Mists themes? And it's like, oh, he's got a lot of chaos damage and curses and toads. So
That's very cool.
you can merge them all together and you can make a support out of that.
Speaking of like adding loot, do you worry about Maven's loot table being slightly weaker now? And obviously like the witnessing bosses don't have that in the same way, or are you happy with where she is now?
So from the witnessing boss's point of view, there are two very good rewards there that are sort of novel to that. So for example, we got rid of cartographer's chisels, but Maven chisels still exist. So now Maven chisels are relatively more valuable in my opinion, because previously that 20% quantity was something you applied from chisels. Now it is inherent to your map completion.
Yeah.
But you can also get a Maven chisel on top. So Maven chisels, in my opinion, will be relatively more valuable for that reason. The other thing is the new astrolabes are 100% drop chance from all the memory bosses, but they will also, once you have the originator voidstone for killing all of the incarnation bosses, that will allow astrolabes to drop from final map bosses in the Atlas. So Maven becomes relatively more valuable for farming astrolabes because she adds more final map bosses. As opposed to Maven herself, I will say that, in my opinion, Maven has the most powerful exceptional support gem on her. Maybe the rarest as well, I think.
Okay.
And we did, maybe I'm wrong and I'm about to get Twitch chat mad at me, but we did keep Awakened, Empower, Enlighten, and Enhance, right?
Yep.
You did.
So those were the three.
Man belohnt, wenn man unterschiedliche Maps farmt.
Are they still called Awakened, I think? Yeah, they're the only gems left that are called Awakened.
Wenn es nicht so nervig wäre, ne?
Awesome. That's that done on that topic. So obviously, I only found out 30 minutes before this podcast that we get to reveal Reliquarian. So maybe we do that now.
Sure.
Yeah. So I have 4 slides here with. I'm going to full screen that to make it easier for people to read, so they won't see us with this. I don't know if you guys can bring up what I'm showing, but I'll be showing like the first image of Reliquarian now.
Yeah, we can sort of see it. It's just very hard to read from. Yeah.
It's a little hard for me to read too. I wonder if I can bring it up somewhere else. Double checking that Twitch chat can see this. Hoping they. We see it good. So we have for the first node, Baruzo's Ambition, Kilowaba's Bluster, Maw of Conquest, Victoria's.
Okay, an der Stelle. Das wurde alles schon, also ich meine, das kennen wir alle inzwischen, oder? Weiß nicht genau, ob wir uns das jetzt hier angucken wollen, weil das wurde da, glaube ich, enthüllt quasi in dem Podcast, richtig? Zeitgleich.
Influence and Brass Dome. This is
the first time seeing these as well. Andrew set these up.
But the one
ich überspringe das mal ein bisschen.
That is very cool.
Yeah, makes me very nervous as well because all the other ascendants.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for letting us share that. That was very neat. Cool. I'm so excited for the fact that it's like a rotating ascendancy. I do love that. It'll be something a little bit fresh, like every.
Is this sponsored by Hilfiger?
I mean, on sort of a broader level, I think one of Path of Exile's biggest strengths is how many modular systems we have that we can iterate on every expansion. You know, like we have Bloodlines, we have Transfigured Gems, we have, you know, now Reliquarian changes every single time. We have tons and tons of systems like that, so that we, you know, we have the new content we add, and then we can also just iterate on all these systems a little bit, and that helps have more new exciting stuff for all the different kinds of players who might be coming back.
Right. Yeah. No, I even have another question about that later. Okay, so some more generic topics. League rewards are moving more to leagues. And I mentioned this at start, but we have things like fossils, clusters, abyssals are mostly removed from non-league content, right? It's like fossils are only found in Delve. Are resonators and fossils are the drop rate buffed to compensate on that? Because, for example, Legion was a
Wer
big
hat Bock auf
source
Delph
of fossils
Farming?
for a lot of us.
Jetzt? Ich finde das ziemlich krass. Also Delph könnte wirklich richtig lohnend werden.
Yeah. So at the moment, we're just stripping fossils from everywhere. We weren't really compensating any of the rewards. We were just like, fossils should be exclusive to Delph. So I guess what happens when you do strip out fossils from Legion is all the other rewards can become more common as a result. So whether or not those other rewards are more valuable than fossils, it's like, yeah, not sure.
Right, I'm just concerned about 20 to 40 kills per dense fossil.
Well, the primary goal was to make some of these mechanics that have had their rewards diluted be more valuable. Like, you know, a common complaint that I've had and that I've seen a lot of people in the community have is that delving doesn't really feel worth the time unless you're at like giga deep depths. And even then I've seen people say it doesn't feel worth the time. So if a pristine fossil is worth 8C each, isn't that going to help address that?
Yeah, it will a little bit, but it does also...
That said, I'm being kind of tongue-in-cheek. Like, I can see the other side of this where particularly people playing in solo self-found might find it a little frustrating to farm up enough fossils to do their crafts. So, like, I am also fine with taking an eye towards delve and potentially, you know, buffing some of the rooms that, you know, taking some of the rooms nobody will ever bother with and replacing them with better ones, buffing some of the rooms. I just don't know how much of that we have time for in the next 3 days.
Right. I guess the primary concern is Delve's power compared to essences and other things, right? Like if the and recombinators and still the Genesis tree, even though it can't make weapons, if it's like super far behind and it's not worth for a player at all to delve at, let's say 150 to 300, which is what most like average players aren't really getting past 300. That is a concern.
I'd be surprised if delve isn't significantly more valuable to do in 328 though.
Yeah, I also wouldn't be against increasing the number of fossils you get from delve at the same time.
Like that is something that we can do relatively quickly. So we'll probably discuss that directly after this.
Nice. Glad I brought it up. What about so everything
gut.
like fossil incubators and delirium orbs are gone, right?
Vielleicht ist es das erste Mal, dass ich seit Jahren mal wieder in Delph reingucke. Wobei ich jetzt schon wieder Angst, also ich finde, Delph ist absoluter FOMO-Content. Ich habe das Gefühl, immer wenn man delft, verpasst man alles, was im Atlas passiert. Und das bei einer Atlas-Änderung eigentlich ein No-Go. Aber mal schauen.
I'm not actually sure about that one. I'll need a check after this, to be honest.
And then
in your initial question, you said cluster and abyss jewels. I mean, that is something maybe we'd eventually want to do, but they haven't gotten as extensive a treatment in this regard as fossils.
Yeah, I think we only removed it from King's March mapping and Tujin, and the primary reason for that is... No, they haven't actually been removed at all. I think they were removed from Tujin, but from King's March mapping, I think we level capped them at 83. Because we want item level 84 abyss jewels to not abyss jewels, delirium cluster jewels to only be coming from the appropriate delirium content. Feels very cheap to be getting like an insanely valuable jewel from like a King's March shipping or mapping window.
And this is something that I feel really strongly on, that it's incredibly important to the health of the game's economy to have special rewards from certain mechanics be sequestered to those mechanics.
Es muss einen Grund geben, jede Mechanik im Spiel zu farmen.
That is at odds with making new things feel rewarding and cool, right? So like you have to balance that, and it's really easy to just take stuff people already want, put it in the new thing, there you go. But that's a bit of a cop-out, and it's a hard thing to do, but it should be the case that every mechanic that is added has some distinct and new and cool thing that it can be specialized at. So that, like, the reason this is important is because of what we saw in something like Affliction League, for instance, where you had maps that were printing oodles and oodles and oodles of loot. But fossils were still worth something in Affliction League because you couldn't use the broken overpowered strat to print them. So the more little corners of the game you have like that, where they have something that they specialize in that you can't get from another source, or at least you can't easily get from another source, because technically at that time you could get fossils elsewhere, just not in as much bulk. The more safe the economy is against, mistakes on our part. It's like It's like if you had an ecology where, you know, all you grew and ate was rice and absolutely nothing else, and then suddenly there's a horrible disease that wipes out all the rice. Now everybody dies. But if you have multiple kinds of crops, you're more resistant to that.
Yeah. No, I mean that's really good to hear in my opinion. Even as somebody who like does prefer SSF, I do prefer when things are not homogenized. So that's really good. But that makes me want to ask about Sanctum, because Sanctum is probably the mechanic that like the least stands out. It doesn't really have its own rewards, except it does have the uniques at the end. But Sanctum's main place in the game right now is a currency farm. It's been targeted a lot. Is that something you guys are discussing, like giving Sanctum its own things that is a little bit more special?
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to sound like I'm deflecting the question, but I am going to pop out for 2 minutes and I'll be back.
He's running, guys. I asked about Sanctum, and he ran.
Das ist crazy.
I will handle that one.
Crazy timing.
Sanctum, I agree with you.
Das ist ein crazy
He's fixing
timing.
Sanctum right now.
I was in QA at the time when Sanctum was being developed, and this was actually a concern that I raised then. I don't like how one-dimensional the reward structure
Ich bin auch kein Sanctum-Fan.
Yeah.
Partially for this reason, which, as I said, I've always felt strongly about. Like, you need to have sequestered corners of the economy that do different things. But also, it becomes incredibly easy to judge the reward output of Sanctum, right?
Yeah.
Like, on the player side, you can get an incredibly clear picture of Sanctum creates this much currency per hour on average, and then that makes it really
Jetzt
hard
fängt die
to
Kacke schon
actually
wieder an
balance Sanctum
mit
in a way
euren
that's okay
Fraktionen.
for the broader economy, because you have to like land it super precisely on the exact amount of currency per hour that players will deem acceptable in order to run the content.
Yeah.
Whereas with other things that have more that have a reward that might be more valuable one league and less valuable in other league, and might be more valuable to some players and less valuable to other players, you have a little more leeway there. You have a little more obscurity.
Ich bin dafür, Mirrors werden aus dem Spiel, aus dem General Pool gelöscht und man kann die nur in Sanctum kriegen.
So to speak.
So does that mean that you want to give it its own unique thing that is new? Because that we haven't seen that before, right? We haven't really seen like an old mechanic. We had the breach rework, but we haven't seen like an old mechanic like suddenly get something new that is very special that usually does come during its actual league.
I can't really unilaterally say that we're going to make that change.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Like, all I can speak to is what I would prefer.
Of course.
And like, yes, if I had infinite time and I could just, you know, say we're doing this, we're doing that, then I would definitely rework Sanctum to have something
That's
cooler and more
Quatsch.
unique and special that it gives as a reward, while also still trying to aim to make it more competitive as a mechanic. Like, I don't really like the place that Sanctum sits in right now, where a lot of people view it as like not really worth running. Or if we were to buff the rewards a bunch, everybody starts viewing it as like this is the only viable strategy early on.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying with the whole, you know, when it rewards just raw pure currency and nothing else, it kind of sits on that nice edge. Like, it's either it's perceived as this busted OP thing that you have to do, or it's not worth doing at all, don't bother. Like, it's very hard to land on the middle there.
It was really interesting during the past few leagues because so many people were in the camp of it's not worth doing at all, don't bother, which meant that it actually was super worth doing because the tomes were free, right? They were just 1C or maybe even like 0.5C. So it did balance itself out a little bit that way. I'm a huge Sanctum enjoyer, so
there is a floor. Yeah, absolutely. It'll be self-correcting to some degree with the economy, but yeah, regardless.
Cool. Speaking of the economy, we have instant trading, currency auction house. I have some questions about that. First, there were a lot of concerns about Faustus being added to the core game and instant buyout and stuff. Are you guys happy pretty much with how that went? They obviously has a lot of connotations with player power.
I mean, I can't speak to like, you know, how the game directors might feel or the company at large, but I personally am happy it's in the game. A more grounded answer. I certainly have seen an impact in the rate at which I can acquire, you know, good, decent, even great rares in a trade league when I do play trade league.
Yeah.
But like, I would say it's worth the trade-off personally. Like, it's just so nice to interact with trade in general now. Like, it just seems worth it to me. Yes.
We're talking about Faustus. Welcome back. Well, while talking about Faustus, currently he has a limit of 10. Is that something that'll ever get changed? Made a larger limit? It's maybe a little low for a lot of people?
There was an issue to change that. It didn't quite make it into 328.
Okay, so that's coming. Cool. Especially white maps being tradable in the currency exchange, or is that going to be a merchant tab thing only?
I don't think they're allowed to be.
Yeah.
It might be a technical limitation because you're only allowed to trade homogeneous items on the currency exchange,
They have
and
a unique ID.
even a white map does not count as a homogeneous item.
Yeah. Sense. Can we get the ability to price an entire merchant tab
Schade.
similar to the way we can do with a premium tab?
Ja, die Übersetzung ist automatisch.
I specifically
Aber besser als gar
requested
nichts.
this because I'm basically
Für die Leute, die
I
wenig
play
Englisch
Trade
verstehen.
League and I do the same thing every single league start where I'll get to around level 90 or so and then I'll just farm ROG for like a few 3 or 4 days. I'm sort of crazy in that I think I'm one of these rare players who actually enjoys trading with other people. But Async Trade did make ROG like way better, and that was my biggest frustration of like the jank of having to like I'll have like 10 tabs with like 10 chaos, 20 chaos, 30 chaos, and I'm like, okay, none of my 30 chaos is selling. I want to make it 20 chaos, and I couldn't do that easily. So yeah,
Awesome.
I will push for it at some point.
That's really good. With the UI. Oh, carry on.
Just one of the reasons why some of this QOL stuff has been a little, I mean, slow's the wrong word, but, you know, has been taking a few leagues is because while we have incredibly talented UI programmers, we just don't have enough of them. So if you are a talented UI programmer in New Zealand, please apply.
Nice.
Grinding Gear Games. Thank you.
Good ad. Next topic is UI. It's a very big personal thing for me.
Tja,
For around 20 minutes, we had an
Fachkräftemangel.
energy shield overlay next to our health bar in the middle of the screen that would separate the energy shield UI and make it above life so that we had a blue bar. It's really annoying, especially for builds like Zibakwa, where there's a bypass energy shield thing, and it just overlays your life bar and just makes it hard to see. Can we have that back? I know there were bugs with it, but we had it for 20 minutes, and they were like, you guys said, oh, we're removing it. We need to fix it. That was 4 years ago.
Sorry, I cannot recall this at all, but I'm certain I can find someone at the company who's familiar with this and I can bring it up.
Awesome. Please give me that back. I really want it. It would mean a lot.
Ich weiß überhaupt nicht, worüber er redet.
Speaking of UI stuff, Mercenary UI for Animate Guardian.
Oh, das ist ein
I
starker.
think the programmers would probably shoot me if I suggested that. It's certainly one of these things where I just don't think it's gonna ever be worth the technical effort to get in the game for what Animate Guardian just does as like a single solo skill. I'm not gonna say no for sure, but I just think we did bring it up at some point. I can't remember the exact reasons why, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I get shot by the programmers.
Okay, that's fair. I hope.
Okay, werden wir
I hope
so
it can be
lesen.
added.
Werden wir nie
Another thing
sehen.
as well, like the UI can be a little bit cluttered right now with boss bars, like covering our buffs and stuff. Is there going to be any like positioning change, tidy up, clean up, anything like that?
I've seen some or heard some discussion and seen some issues floating around regarding that, specifically like on the PoE2 issue tracker, and that is the same implementation across both games there for the boss bar. So I can't really promise when or what form that will take, but it is on people's radar. That is something that would be more, you know, Jonathan and Mark's decisions as it does impact both games.
Yeah, I'm just trying to plant as many seeds as possible for things that aren't being done,
Sure.
and I'm guessing they also watch some of this. So
Yeah, we're probably the wrong people to ask about UI type of things.
yeah, right. Well, you're gonna hate the next two questions, but then it gets great again.
Go for it.
In the past, there has been talk about importing pre-planned trees to PoE, just in case you know the status of that. Like a trace
not
route.
specifically the status, but there is someone who has been working on it.
Cool.
I can tell you that much.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Muting our own specters, other player sounds. I know we got a minion you can buy to kill other people's minions. But even muting our
You
own
steal them.
specters.
Oh, actually, there is one to kill them too, isn't there?
There is, yeah, I have it. It was mandatory for Trade League. Yeah. Can we mute?
I think we added some tech a while back that allows you to mute certain effects in your hideout. Usually those effects were related to like automated war cries.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the way that was set up was it was on a per effect basis. And if we were to do that with specters, well, then does that mean we need to go through every single spectral monster in the game and pull out all of their effects? There'll be a much
We need a more dynamic
solution for that, for sure.
As somebody that enjoyed Forged Frostbearers last patch, did not enjoy my hideout last patch.
Yeah. I think I remember when I played Slave Driver Spectres once, and those things were the most erratic people ever in my hideout. Yeah.
It's a legit concern. Since we have the baseline tech to mute things selectively in your hideout, it seems like a good place to utilize it. So I'll put it on the list for QOL stuff to look into for 329.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next question are about bosses. Obviously the game's been going for a while now, and some bosses were added a long time. Is there any talk of like updating older bosses? Like for example, the Shaper still has 3 faces that we're sort of one-shotting. Not necessarily cutting out phases, either buffing the, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like a little bit of a refresher on older bosses. Elder, very, very outdated by now.
Yeah. Well, one of the more honest answers here is that those very old bosses are set up in a much more hacky way than the newer bosses are.
Yeah.
They aren't using like our new designer-friendly scripting language. So whenever someone tries to go in and change things, it's a little bit of a minefield, which is probably just shows our reticence to, like, if we were to fix those fights, then we'd probably just want to rework them entirely using our scripting language and change all of their skills. Well, whether or not that will happen, or maybe at some point would phase out the Shaper and Elder instead, that might be the better solution, honestly.
I think what you'd want to do is hybridize changing those bosses and changing older content with introducing new stuff, because that's probably the most efficient use of the design and development resources. Is like, whatever storyline beats we go to next could potentially include also there's some change that has occurred that means that we can justify going back and to a degree retconning and to a degree reviewing some of these older bosses that don't hold up to modern standards.
And on the off chance that it's an easy fix, would it be easy to, when the Elder spawns for Elder Guardian and does like the feels like 4 or 5 second portals, that easy to make like half a second?
Oh, I wish that was an easy fix.
The thing is, I thought that one of our senior monster designers sped it up a few leagues ago, or am I imagining that?
I think so.
Yeah,
it's not that fast.
I think I know who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
I have discussed.
I can't remember if that went live or not, but he was looking into seeing if there was some simple change he could make to speed up those portals, and that was the best he could come up with, given only a designer's time and not getting a programmer to go and look at the real technical aspect of it.
I do think it did get sped up a little bit, but it's still quite slow.
Okay, also wahrscheinlich werden wir irgendwann eine Überarbeitung der alten Bosse
really
haben.
Big announcements from Mirage was like ground loot is starting to be touched now. You're doubling the currency.
Oh, jetzt wird's spicy.
Could you go into what doubling currency means a little bit? For example, does it affect scarabs? Is that a currency?
It does not affect scarabs. So the things that it will affect are all the core drop pool currency, but I guess from a player's point of view, that might not be immediately clear. So it's all your standard currency items, including quality currency. It will also include a couple of, so the doubling loot currency, I don't know if I should be giving away all the secret weightings. Well, to be fair, these aren't the weightings, but there were certain currencies we did not want to double the rate of from ground loot. For example, Mirrors of Kalandra have not been doubled.
Schade.
They are actually slightly more common than before, but they have not got the same buff to ground loot that all the other currencies did. Just because we want Mirrors to remain just as special as they are now.
Ey, es droppen mehr Mirrors jetzt, Leute.
Only found 4.
There are a couple. Voidborn keys are not more common. Voldos puzzle boxes are not more common. Is there any other specific items you'd want to ask about there?
Diese Liga gibt's für jeden ein Mirror.
Not more common.
Oh, interesting. That is a choice.
We were treating that at the same specialness as a Mirror of Kalandra.
Well, I mean, okay, so the obvious ones are also there's a lot of concern with all the Harbinger currencies now. Because like yeah, like annulls and ancient orbs and stuff, are they way more farmable now, or like
Well, arguably they were more farmable before, because if you wanted annulment orbs, you'd go and do Harbinger, right?
yes.
But annulment orbs are more common so aside from everything getting doubled, we did actually look at a bunch of the specific currencies and change their weightings relative to each other. So annulment orbs are actually much more common from
About
core drops
fracturing
than
orbs?
they were before, relative to the other currencies. Same as exalted orbs and regal orbs were the other two notable ones that are now much more common than before.
Okay. Fracturing orbs?
Fracturing orbs have been added to the core drop pool, but I'm not going to state how common or how rare they are.
Okay.
Relative to other
Cool.
currencies.
Nice.
Diesen Mann hier, ne, wenn irgendwer von euch auf der ExileCon ist, füllt ihn ab. Versucht alles aus ihm raus. Das ist euer Mann. Mit dem müsst ihr befreundet sein. Der kann euch alles sagen.
Thing that was brushed up on a little bit in the Q&A was tiered loot. Can you talk a little bit why quantity is an issue with tiered loot? And I have a potential solution idea to spitball.
Can you expand on the question a little bit?
So,
I'm not.
For example, when it comes to tiered loot from PoE 2, right, where they identified a better tier, I'm a huge fan of the idea of that, because I would like to see less. Even in PoE 2, I haven't necessarily identified a really good tier 5 loot, but I do think this system is really cool. Big fan of it. But there was a mention in the Ziggy Q&A that
wir bringen ihn in deinen Keller, bitte nicht.
And player bonus would be an issue with introducing tiered loot in PoE 1. Like quant bonus.
I'm not 100% sure what that was referring to, but quantity will give you more memory strand items. We did significantly buff memory strand items.
Yeah.
So memory strand items are effectively our version of tiered loot from PoE 2. So the more quant you have, the more of those items you will get. So I'm not 100% sure what the quantity issue is here.
I guess the main difference is that the memory strand items don't kick in until you're in the end game, whereas the tiered loot starts in like the latter half of the story in PoE 2. So it's feels a bit more core, I guess, but they are pretty similar.
That too, but I don't know if this could be like very, very at odds with what the community feels, but I feel like there's a very big difference with that and identifying, like, it feels more like crafting to me. It doesn't feel like finding an item.
Sure.
I guess I wish I was finding a little bit more rare items. Like, it does feel with the memory strands item, I feel a little bit more like I have to have a strategy. I have to think a little bit about how to craft them and how to best utilize those memory strands, as opposed to something like, I don't want to call it smart loot, but like the smart loot from Heist, right? Where, wow, that is a really good item.
But isn't that essentially just, I don't mean to be combative or anything, but isn't that essentially just memory strands, except they go away when you craft on them? Because when you identify an item with memory strands, the memory strands are affecting the identified mods, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess for me, they haven't felt as special or as like identifying an item.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I think the reason for that is just because we've got so many other sources of like better rares spread throughout the game. So, for example,
Real Talk, Memory Strand Items. Hat irgendwer von euch mal so ein Item aufgehoben und gedacht, wow, crazy, geil, dass das ein Memory Strand Item ist. Ich hau da jetzt ein Exalted Orb drauf und hatte dann ein richtig krasses Item. Also ich kann mich aus den letzten Ligen, glaube ich, nicht einmal dran erinnern, dass ich die überhaupt aufgehoben habe. Ich habe die, glaube ich, sogar ausgeblendet. Ich heb die schon gar nicht mehr auf. Ja, bei mir auch.
From King's March and from the Breach Tree and from Heist and from Rog and that type of thing. Picking up rares on the ground is a very tricky topic to address, and I do even wonder if players do want to be picking up rares off the ground to find the best items.
eine
theoretically, I
86er
would love
Base.
it
Okay,
that
check.
you could drop the best item in the game from the ground. Which is why I sort of have other separate issues with systems like synthesis, implicits, and exclusive mods, but completely different topic.
Yeah, it is a tricky one. Like, I don't want to be like identifying and picking up every rare item for sure, but I do, at least in my head, obviously it's hard to know if that's the case, but I do love the idea of, like, let's say a tier 5 amulet being something that's actually quite rare, like something you don't drop every day, and you're excited to identify it because it has a very big chance to be good. I do like that idea in my head.
Another one of the issues, which is I think more noticeable in PoE 1, is if you look at an amulet in PoE 2 and you get a tier 5 amulet, basically every single one of the mods that can roll on the amulet, in my opinion, can be a very good and generically good mod. There is a lot more filler mods on amulets in PoE 1 compared to PoE 2, which means that even if all the mods roll at their highest tiers, it just doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a very good amulet, because it could be rolling with some filler mods or some incompatible mods, which I think, because the PoE 2 mod system is much more streamlined, I feel like on average, if you found a tiered loot in PoE 1 and PoE 2, the PoE 2 one is probably going to feel better.
It will. There is a lot of filler, for sure. No, it's a tricky one. Have you guys talked about, like, drop-only mods? Similar, like, we did have that in Incursion. I'm a big fan of drop-only mods. Thoughts on that?
I mean, I've specifically brought it up because it's something that I like in other games and also liked in Incursion, but like it has been discussed. It's been a part of the topic of discussion. It's certainly not something that I can say we'll commit to.
Yeah. Oh, quick thing I remembered. Any chance of getting something like shift click or control click to use wisdom scrolls in your inventory? Like when you're mid map, sometimes you'll find like Keepers of the Trove. You'll still have 20 rings in your inventory, but you don't necessarily want to go back to your hideout. It's a very small feature that we also see in things like Project Diablo 2 that I'm a huge fan of.
I reckon this is one that we'd have to elevate to Mark and Jonathan as being like, is it removing too much item weight?
Like as in you use the wisdom scroll from your inventory.
Yeah, it still uses the wisdom scroll. I just don't have to click the wisdom scroll, hold shift. It feels really nice. It's surprisingly good. We're still using wisdom scrolls.
Yeah, but like I said, I feel like that would definitely be a Mark or Jonathan question.
Warte mal, wie funktioniert das? Die Items liegen auf dem Boden und man kann quasi über einen Shortcut auf dem Boden identifizieren, oder was?
Juicing, always a hot topic.
Sure.
What's the main problem you feel astrolabes solve? And also, is for the people that do really like juicing, do you feel like astrolabes will still allow you to sort of like...
Okay, alles im Inventar. Er meinte, wenn er in einer Map ist und KB hat, in Sideout zu gehen. Okay.
I don't necessarily do this a lot myself, but will you still be able
okay, einen Knopf, wo Identify All und wenn du die Scrolls im Inventar hast, dann wird das halt gemacht. Keine Ahnung, ist das eine Quality of Life, wo ich sagen würde, könnte man machen. Genauso wie ein Auto-Sort-Button zum Beispiel. Da weiß ich nicht. Ob Granny Gear Games da wirklich so hart mit sein sollte. Also so ein paar Quality-Funktionen im Inventar, why not?
Like, pre-roll
Würde ich cool
100
finden.
maps, grab 100 scarabs, and with astrolabes, achieve that similar flow state to before.
I think, you should be able to. So basically the way that the shaped regions work is when you complete one of the maps, then it will add modifiers to the other maps. Now, you wouldn't really want to be like having to care too much about what those additional modifiers are.
Yeah.
Because that might say what you mean, where it's like, oh, I rolled this map, but actually now I need to change my Atlas tree and my scarabs.
Yeah.
So all of the mods should be related to the current mechanic, but there might be some generic ones added on top. I think we might have showed one, I can't remember, in the live stream, which I might have removed since, like adding essences or something to like a harvest astrolabe. I wouldn't really want that type of thing, for example. So if you've got like a harvest astrolabe, then all of the mods will either be generic stuff like pack size quant, or something related to the harvest mechanic, juicing it itself. So you shouldn't necessarily need to be changing what harvest scarabs you're using.
Cool. And do you think there'll be a need to like hover over the maps before and see which one you're starting with?
I'd need to play around with that and find out from like how I would behave as a player. If like this one's got a good mod, so I need to save it till last. So should I run these ones first? Yeah, there might be a little bit of that.
Yeah. Well.
Although if you're using the keystone, then you don't need to bother with that at all.
Yeah, I do like that you guys added that. Pretty cool. Next up, King's March. Very, very hot topic. Especially because it feels very mandatory. How do you guys feel about King's March, and do you think the current change with moving it to the or addresses that issue? Or you still can like yeah, I would personally say it feels a bit mandatory.
I would want to see how all of the changes we made this league have played out. It's more of like a first step in the direction of evaluating, like, we'll see if these changes help address the King's March problem, and if that's still a problem, we'll just keep making more changes.
Yeah. Mercenaries is another one that is potentially coming back. And Mercenaries is also something that I would be also worried about, would be feeling very mandatory. Have you ever discussed rotating league mechanics?
It's one of those situations, like I said earlier in the podcast, where like I don't, on a fundamental, like subjective level, I don't really feel like that's good, but I can't put my finger on exactly why. I probably would have to think about it more. Mercenaries is a difficult one, though. I mean, that's the main reason it hasn't come back, right? Because like functionally, we could probably just slap it in with a couple of weeks of, a week or two of a programmer's time to try and solve all the problems with sending it core and all the database related stuff and all that. But like there are design questions there that are very difficult to answer. And it'll come back when we have good answers to those.
Yeah. I mean, Mercenaries is definitely for me something where I love the league, but I was like, please don't go core, because it would feel very mandatory. I do see those issues.
Ich fand Mercenary cool. Ich finde Söldner würden gut passen in PoE, aber I don't know. Halt auf eine andere Variante. Wie gesagt, hat er mal gesagt, dass sie auf jeden Fall einen Party-Slot füllen sollten, also dass man sich quasi NPC-Freunde dadurch holen kann oder einen NPC-Freund. Das fände ich nicht schlecht. Aber nicht, dass man halt doppelt so große Partygrößen dann hat. Man muss sich halt aussuchen, nimmt man einen Merc mit oder einen echten Spieler, wenn es um Partygröße geht. Aber I don't know. Ich fand, also, keine Ahnung, klar Balancing und so, aber fand es nicht so schlecht.
Cool. Alright. I'm sort of at the, those were the main topics we had, and then I have, some rapid fire Q&A. Can Reliquarian use Forbidden Flame and Flesh at all from like normal Scion?
Reliquarian can use the Ascendant's Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels, but she does not have her own, and the reason we didn't add her own is because the whole we're rotating the uniques every league thing.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Ascendants are allowed to be, well, Scion Ascendancies are allowed to be weird and different.
Target dummies.
No plans that I'm aware of.
I really want target dummies.
That would be a Mark and Jonathan question, sorry.
Yeah. The console players were asking if they can have crossplay, or if they can't have crossplay, if they can be part of our economy.
Also have no idea, sorry.
Yeah, this is... I don't want to seem like we're dodging questions here, but this is something that, definitely is more like... this would actually be more of a question for our less often seen game director Trevor, who is the lead on all the console related stuff.
Cool. I just figured I'd bring it up. There were so many console players asking about it. Scrying and the seer, is that still a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it works basically the exact same as it currently does in live.
You guys ever discussed anything like color coding for map mods? Any like change to map mods? Things like that? Like remaking them? Both of those are things we're asked a lot.
I mean, revamping them and adding some new ones or removing some or something like that is certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Color coding is something that I might get some flack for saying, but I'm personally kind of against because I don't like the aesthetic direction that it takes the items in the game if you do that too much.
When you say color coding, what do you specifically want color coded?
I think I don't want it myself, for the record. I just like, I know a lot of people want to be able to filter map mods for people that aren't using regex, I guess, to use. So being able to filter out, reflect, and stuff like that, and make that red. I don't necessarily care. I don't really have a problem with any map mods.
I don't know. Well, hopefully Reflect is a lot easier to deal with this patch.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll buy you guys some beers or food at ExileCon. That was big fan of those changes.
Especially for users, right?
Thank you. Can we have multiple astrolabes in one region at the same time?
No, you can. Well, we've split the atlas into what we're calling 4 quadrants. And each of the quadrants, when you apply an astrolabe to a quadrant, you can only have one shaped region at a time. So 4 total on your atlas. And depending on which region you put it in, determines which memory vault you go to, and the memory vaults each have their own distinct set of rewards, which I'm sure eventually a meta will shape out. But yeah, try it and find out.
Nice. That sounds very exciting. Are Metacraft locations changed at all? Are still in their respective maps like Careblade and stuff?
Yeah. So although you don't need to complete all of the unique maps anymore to get your maximum atlas completion, there are still some unique maps that you'll need to do to get those specific metacrafts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. So with the change to Nightmare Maps tier 17s and 16.5s, is going to be more of a scarcity on item level 86? Like base types?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. There are still sources of them. Personally, as a player, I'm kind of okay with that. I think it's cool when the very tippy top of bases are scarce and valuable.
Yeah, I was contemplating adding +1 level as a very rare mod to shaped regions. I haven't yet, but I think I want to avoid it, to be honest.
I mean, it definitely does add some value back to Delve, because Delve has that.
Yes.
Cool. Can we log directly into the hideout like in PoE 2?
Mark and Jonathan question for sure on that. I'm not 100% sure why they're different in both games, but yeah.
That seems strange.
Irgendwer hat das mal erklärt.
Or
Awesome,
Andrew
thank
will.
you.
One of us will.
Hopefully we can
Ich
revisit this.
glaube
list of
Chris hat
afterwards.
damals die Begründung dazu
The
geliefert.
old memories were baked
Es war irgendwas
into Kirak
Technisches.
with like the blue text special memory maps. Like Kirak Harvest Beasts, etc. Are they gone?
Well, the Karak Harvest Beasts already exist in the core bestiary
Die
pool. They're just
Kackerntebeasten.
extremely rare.
Yeah.
I think all of them except one are now 2 to 4 times more common. If you want to guess which one I did not make more common.
Dem one, now that it's been reworked?
It's the rerolling Synth Implicits one.
Wow, that's gonna be very
Well-
expensive then.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, we wanted to do a small rework to synthesis itemization this patch, but we might end up doing it next patch. I think
Oh,
synthesis
das
items
wär
are in a
geil.
little bit of a weird spot at the moment where it's like
Ja.
you don't even get them from synthesis maps.
Ja.
And
A lot of
Ja,
people want
then you
that.
have these
Ja.
crafts where you can
Synthesis
the base type
rework
doesn't
wäre
matter if you can just
insane.
continuously re-roll your something plus it's forever. It's probably going to be quite controversial for very, very in-game crafters, but it's still in the game for now.
I love it. Yeah, no, we would love to see synth items drop from the synth maps like Cortex and stuff. That'd be very cool. Support gems. I realize it's probably not the perfect question for you, but it's something I want you to bring up. Support gems are still like class locked, and in a lot of cases don't necessarily make sense. Like Templar doesn't have faster attacks, but it does have a lot of like attack based things. Do they still need to be class locked early on?
I had someone ask me that exact question 2 days ago, so now I'm wondering if they told you or you told them to ask me it.
This is Sarge that brought it up.
This is one of the things that PoE2's uncut support system kind of solved in a much more elegant way, where like you have the benefit of the class locking is there's fewer options displayed to a new player, right? And Path of Exile is already a complex enough game that it's really difficult to get into. But you are correct that it's like, it's kind of weird and arbitrary that you just can't get faster attacks randomly on Templar early on. Like that's not really for some super significant balance reason. It's just because we don't want to throw even more options in the face of a new player. Like, so the uncut kind of allows for that, right? Where like you have
aber auch
here's the
schon
menu
zu
that
viele
gets shown
Optionen.
immediately, and then you
Also
can click down
auch
here
mit
if you
Class
want
Lock gibt es schon
literally
viel zu viele Optionen für neue
Actually, I
Spieler.
want to sort of run a hypothetical by you, because this sort of relates to our conversation earlier of shaking up the leveling meta.
Mein Vorschlag wäre da wirklich, in dem Standardfenster sind einfach irgendwie Empfehlungen drin. Da sind auch wirklich nur 3 aktive Skills und, keine Ahnung, 20 Supports drin, fertig. Und man kann irgendwo sagen, entweder ein neuer Tab, das wäre so die jetzige PoE-Implementierung quasi, neuer Tab, wo drin steht All, fertig, da sind alle drin. Erster Tab ist quasi der Vorschlag-Tab, wo wirklich aber auch noch viel weniger drin ist als jetzt. Also wirklich so, dass man als neuer Spieler reingeht und sieht, okay, ich habe die Auswahl zwischen 3 aktiven Skills und 20 Supports, fertig. Und dann kann man halt im zweiten Tab oder über einen Haken von mir aus oder so alle anzeigen. Wäre cool.
What if you started a Templar and you couldn't get like 30 options by the end of Act 1 for what main skill you can use, and you only got like 5 instead?
That sounds horrible. Yeah.
Basically, what we'd be saying then is we're prescribing you exactly what skill you're allowed to level with.
No, I think that sounds awful. I think I would literally be lynched by the community if I said it like that. It's also, I feel like you're already sort of bypassing the whole like overwhelming thing by what support gems you're offering the players for free. Because like when I'm coaching or helping a new player, that's mostly what they're looking at, right? They're looking at the offered gems. And in the actual sales window, we're talking about the difference between like 90 or 100 support gems anyway. You're searching for that, and it can often be more convoluted for new players because it's maybe in the guide. But like, yeah, they don't know why they don't have access to it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think it comes with the territory of the earlier conversation around like, you know, stale leveling meta and stale leveling skills and that sort of thing. And that is something that we want to try and look into and address in 329. So this is probably worth having in that scope document to discuss. So
yeah,
get it in there.
No, for sure. I think it's a good thing to talk about. I definitely don't think like support gems are what's gating that. But yeah, I would love to see that.
Well, it almost makes me wonder if we should have the Lily vendor just be
like in every town?
Yep.
Or something?
Yep, basically. But supports only. Or should it be for skills too then?
I don't know.
It is more important on support gems than it is on active skills, but I do think it's a big W for the game if it is on both. I think most of what's like changing the meta and stuff is the region that they're in on the tree and the ascendancies anyway, right? Not so much what gems you have access to. If I have access to Duelist gets Fireball, I'm not going to suddenly start playing a Fireball build for most things.
Yeah.
Cool. Also, looking at the corner of my eye out of the chat interaction, everyone is saying yes, please. Yeah. People want confirmation that double Falborn uniques still exist with the Genesis tree adjustments.
Yeah, they still exist. The unique side of the Genesis tree hasn't gotten a huge amount of adjustments. The majority of the adjustments / nerfs to the equipment
Yeah.
tree.
Nice.
War klar.
Was there ever any talk of making Battleborn uniques droppable from Breach content as a natural drop?
They do sort of drop, as in they all drop from the chests that you find in the high fortresses
But
and the
not from
Breach Hive
kills.
boss encounter. And I think the Breach bosses also have a decently high chance to drop them as well.
Hmm.
But
what
they
about
don't drop
killing
from,
normal
like,
monsters?
in-world. Wait, say that again, sorry?
What about from like killing normal, like say you're doing an unstable breach and you're killing the 3 rares or a bunch of the normal monsters?
Not currently, but I guess you could, maybe it makes sense to add it as like a small chance to drop from Veron. So
Right.
when you do the wild boss in the map.
Could be something that we iterate on with the Atlas passive tree as well. But yeah, not currently in 328.
Could you bring us the Path of Exile 2 gambling box to PoE1? To sneak that in?
The Venters one that's like all the little cogs that spin and
I
stuff.
love it.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, we actually had some discussions
Das
maybe
wäre
like a
gut.
month or so ago, because we were a little bit concerned with the changes we're making this patch.
Könnte man
is
wirklich machen,
gold
ne?
less useful now that we're making these changes to King's March? So we're like, oh, maybe we should be adding some more gold sinks in. So we were considering bringing the vendors box back. I think we might have had some like something related to Kadero as well. So you never know, maybe something
Boah,
in 329
Kadero
that
mit
will
Gold
allow you
wäre
to
auch
do some
geil.
big gambas with gold.
Oh, nice. I love that. That'd be really cool. Oh, I think I meant to bring it up that I missed it from my sheet, but with Beyond, we saw that there is a change now that allows you to have 3 Beyond
Martin.
bosses spawn, right? Which is cool. But personally, I feel like hopefully that does fix it a little bit, but I feel like with Beyond, it has been a little bit antithetical to a reward feeling because I feel punished for the boss spawning because without doing anything special, it prevents Beyond from spawning. You thought about or discussed buffing the loot from the bosses
Danke,
so that
Martin.
it does feel
Danke
more
für
like
den
a win
gifted sub.
condition when you actually see them and not
Groß.
as much as like, oh no, now Beyond Rares don't spawn anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has happened once or twice,
Yeah.
but if it's still the case that they feel like a punishment rather than a reward, then
I mean,
they need more buffs.
there's quite a large contention between the natural behavior of Beyond spawning and the Endless Tide Keystone, because you need a balance around a certain level of juice effectively. So basically, for the majority of players who aren't juicing very much, you probably shouldn't be taking the Endless Tide Keystone. But at some point, once you're juicing a lot, then the Endless Tide Keystone is basically mandatory for you. You reach this critical point where you should not be using the Keystone, and then you definitely should be using the Keystone.
Yeah. No, I would love that to be looked at a little bit because it does feel a little bit weird with Beyond, which especially because it used to be such a big part of the game, right?
Danke, Gubi. Martin, für den Sub an Gubi.
There are a few zones like King's March, Menagerie, Delve that delete, especially like the corpse specters when they're taken out. They don't go on the ground; they just vaporize. Can that be changed so that they at least do like itemize on the ground?
Maybe.
But yeah, I don't know if it's a technical
I would
limitation.
like it to work that way. The Menagerie is cursed. It's a horrible ancient cursed area. The bestiary in general is ancient and cursed, and basically just know that every iteration we've made to bestiary for new scarabs and the passive tree and all that has been brought into the game kicking and screaming and causing 17 different bugs. So yes, I would like to do that. As to whether it's worth, the hair that will be torn out of a poor programmer's head for trying to go back and make Menagerie do something different, we'll see.
Well, yeah. It was definitely like a jarring thing. Is like Spectres. I haven't played that much Spectres lately, and they just vaporized in Delve. Cool. Vendors in the campaign did get changed somewhat recently, like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, to where they do not refresh their entire inventory on level up, but instead remove some items and add some items. How do you guys feel about that? Is that something you'd potentially change?
Yeah, personally, I don't like it very much. I have had frustrations with it. I just haven't thought about it in a while. So yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should go back to what it used to be, where it's very clear when an item will be rotate in and out. Because I think I was like looking for a specific quiver-based type in Act 2, and I kept on going back level after level, and it's like, none of the quivers are refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit frustrating. Same with like the cost is a little bit odd. Like it's very hard for me to buy if I actually do see an item during leveling. It's like, wow, that's actually a good item, but it's like 4 alchemies or like 2 chaos, and I'm like, I don't have that in Act 2.
Well, you might now.
Yeah,
with
true.
the doubled currency. I was doing some playtesting over the weekend and got a lot more currency while leveling than I have in previous experiences.
That's exciting.
If I may have a tangent here, I was just going to say, with buffing the rate of a currency is like, it has a lot of collateral effects throughout the game. Like, for example, you can drastically buff the number of exalted orbs that drop. But now all of a sudden, the crafting object,
Ich bin echt gespannt, wie die neuen Drops sich anfühlen werden.
Exalted orbs are now relatively cheaper
Es wird ein anderes Gefühl, glaube ich.
That cost chaos orbs. And then, yeah, there's just
ich freue mich jetzt schon drauf, Freitag um 20:10 Uhr, wenn die ersten Leute schreiben, yo, erster Exalted Orb in Akt 1, yo, erster Chaos Orb, yo, jetzt schon Alchemy. Das wird so wild, weil die Leute, ich wette 80% der Leute realisieren nicht, dass was geändert wurde. Aber ist geil, weil die Leute freuen sich dann ja übelst darüber. Sie wissen ja nicht, dass es weniger wert ist.
So many different places that you need to change. Like, I think we've changed the influenced item recipe. No longer gives exalted shards, now gives exalted orbs. The gilded fossil, the chase outcome used to be an exalted orb. I think I might have stealth buffed that, so maybe gilded fossils are now better this league.
Wow, that
might not be
a big
giving
change.
an exalted orb anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot of subtle things throughout the game might end up feeling quite a bit different this league because of these like few small changes to currency weights.
Those are huge changes. Like those are pretty big. Wow. Okay. The Swedish guy wants to know about Wretched Defilers. Are they still exclusive to like Nightmare Maps?
What's the Swedish guy?
Are they tier 17 only?
Gezi?
There is that Atlas passive that allows you to get T17 map packs and regular maps, but I assume those aren't an efficient way to farm them because they don't show up very often. So
there's a Mirage wish that adds those map packs to the Mirage area.
Okay.
So target that wish if you want those monsters as a Spectre.
All right. Can we Spectre the new Mirage monsters?
Yeah.
Cool. Go forth, Gazi. Find me a good one. Awesome. That was pretty much every question that I had. I'll end with pineapple and pizza. Yuri nay.
Yes.
I sure. I don't feel strongly. I worked at a pizza place a while ago that did, much weirder stuff. So I've become kind of, I don't know. It's become blasé to me.
Gute Frage.
Apparently in Sweden they have like banana on pizza. Something?
Yeah, that I'm not as on board with.
Never tried that.
Yeah.
And my favorite that we made was pulled pork and mango. That was very good.
Auf YouTube, Leute, schreibt mal in die Kommentare, Pineapple, also Ananas auf Pizza, ja oder nein. Ab in die Kommentare damit.
I do though. I do judge.
Guten Loot.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your days to come and chat with me here.
Gutes Interview.
Dropped a lot of cool info and just great answers to everything. So just thank you guys so much. Everybody in chat, let's get a big clap for Octavian and Andrew.
Clap.
Thank you.
Schicht im Schacht. Cool. Geil. Echt gutes Interview, muss ich sagen. Gutes Interview. Gute Fragen eigentlich. Sehr interessant, aufschlussreich. Bin gespannt auf das nächste Interview. Das ist am morgigen Tag, also am Mittwoch mit Jungroan. Da bin ich extrem gespannt drauf. Mal schauen, was uns erwartet.